We were just three bored teenagers looking for a thrill. Tyler, Jess, and I had heard the rumors about the old Evergreen Mall, abandoned for over a decade, said to be haunted by the restless spirits of a tragic fire. It sounded like the perfect place to spend a Saturday night. We snuck in through a broken side door, the air inside stale and heavy with decay. Flashlights in hand, we ventured deeper into the labyrinth of forgotten storefronts and shattered glass. The once bustling corridors were now silent, our footsteps echoing ominously. "Let's check out the food court," Tyler suggested, his voice wavering slightly. Jess and I agreed, though I could feel a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. The food court was eerily empty, the tables and chairs coated in a thick layer of dust. As we explored, I noticed something strange. There were no signs of the fire everyone talked about. No scorch marks, no charred debris, just an unsettling stillness. "Guys, over here," Jess called out. She had found a door marked maintenance that was slightly ajar. Curiosity got the better of us, and we squeezed through the narrow opening into a dark hallway. The further we went, the colder it became. Our breath fogged the air, and an overwhelming sense of dread settled over us. Tyler, always the bravest, led the way, his flashlight beam dancing across the walls. That's when we heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping, like someone drumming their fingers on a table. It grew louder, closer, until it seemed to echo all around us. "What the hell is that?" Jess whispered, her grip on my arm tightening. We rounded a corner and saw it, a figure at the far end of the hallway, hunched and misshapen. Its limbs twisted at unnatural angles. It was tapping its long, bony fingers against the wall, its head twitching erratically. "Let's get out of here," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But Tyler was already moving forward, as if drawn by some unseen force. The thing turned its head towards us, its eyes two hollow voids. In an instant it lunged at Tyler, moving with impossible speed. His scream pierced the air as it grabbed him and dragged him into the darkness. We ran. We didn't stop until we burst out of the mall and into the safety of the parking lot, gasping for breath. Jess was sobbing uncontrollably, and I could barely think straight. Tyler was gone. We tried to tell the police, but they didn't believe us, chalking it up to an overactive imagination and teenage hysteria. The Evergreen Mall was sealed off not long after that night, rumors of its haunted reputation bolstered by Tyler's disappearance. Jess and I never spoke about it again, but the memory of those hollow eyes and Tyler's terrified scream will haunt me forever. It was supposed to be a dare. My friends Tom, Sarah, Mike, and I had heard the stories about Fairview Lab, about how it had been shut down years ago due to some shady experiments. We were intrigued by the legends of mutant creatures and secret projects, so we decided to see for ourselves. We slipped in through a broken window, the air inside musty and stale. Our flashlights cast eerie shadows on the walls, the beams slicing through the darkness. The halls were filled with forgotten equipment and papers scattered like confetti. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of our footsteps. "This place is the creepy as hell," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's the point," Tom replied with a grin. He led the way, always the brave one, always eager to prove himself. We found our way to what looked like the main lab. Rusty metal tables stood in disarray, and strange machines lined the walls. In the center of the room was a large metal cage, its door hanging open. It looked like something had forced its way out. "Guys, check this out," Mike said, pointing to a set of double doors labeled "Authorized Personnel Only." "Should we?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. "Of course," Tom said, pushing the doors open. We entered a long corridor, lined with observation windows. Each room held remnants of experiments, broken glass, strange instruments, and stains that looked suspiciously like blood. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the hall. We froze, exchanging nervous glances. "What was that?" Sarah whispered. Before anyone could answer, something moved in the shadows at the far end of the corridor. It stepped into the light, and I felt my blood run cold. The creature was humanoid, but grotesquely deformed. Its skin was pale and stretched tight over its skeletal frame, and its eyes glowed with an eerie, unnatural light. It moved with a predatory grace, its long claws clicking on the floor. "Run!" Tom shouted, but it was too late. The creature lunged at us with incredible speed, slashing at Mike. He screamed as it tore into his leg, blood spraying across the floor. "Help him!" Sarah cried, but the creature was relentless. Tom grabbed a metal rod from a nearby table and swung at the beast, hitting it squarely on the head. The creature staggered back, momentarily stunned. "Go, go, go!" Tom yelled, and we bolted down the corridor. I helped Mike limp along, his face pale with pain. We reached a door at the end of the hall, but it was locked. Tom frantically tried to force it open while the creature regained its bearings. It was coming for us, its growls growing louder. "Come on!" Tom shouted, throwing his weight against the door. Finally, it gave way, and we tumbled into a stairwell. We raced down the stairs, the creature's footsteps echoing behind us. We burst out of the lab and into the night, but Mike was fading fast. We dragged him to the car, and I sped to the nearest hospital. He was losing blood quickly, and his leg was mangled beyond recognition. Tom stayed behind to call the police, but by the time they arrived, the creature had disappeared, leaving behind only the chaos we had witnessed. Mike survived, but he was never the same. The doctors said it was a miracle he lived at all. The four of us never spoke of that night again. Sarah moved away, unable to cope with the trauma. The lab was sealed off for good, and the rumors grew even darker. They say that the creature still lurks in the shadows, waiting for its next prey. I've always loved camping. There's something about the isolation, the silence of nature, and the crackling of a campfire that feels liberating. Last fall, I decided to spend a weekend in the Appalachian Mountains. I'd been there a few times before, but never alone. This time, I wanted solitude. The first night was peaceful. I set up my tent by a small clearing with a stream nearby, cooked a simple meal, and settled in by the fire with a book. The sounds of the forest at night were soothing, and I fell asleep easily under a blanket of stars. The second night things started to change. I was sitting by the fire when I heard it. A distant, eerie howl that seemed to echo through the mountains. It wasn't like any animal sound I'd ever heard. It was almost human, but not quite. A chill ran down my spine, but I shrugged it off. The Appalachians were full of wildlife, and I figured it was just an animal call I wasn't familiar with. Later, as I lay in my tent trying to sleep, I heard something moving outside. At first, it was just the rustling of leaves, but then it turned into soft, deliberate footsteps. I held my breath, listening intently. The footsteps circled my tent slowly, and I could see a shadow moving just beyond the thin fabric. I grabbed my flashlight and, with trembling hands, unzipped the tent. "Hello?" I called out, shining the light into the darkness. The footsteps stopped, and for a moment there was only silence. Then, from the edge of the clearing, a voice echoed back. "Help me," it said, mimicking my tone almost perfectly. But there was something off about it, something that made my blood run cold. I scanned the trees with my flashlight, and that's when I saw it. A figure standing just at the edge of the clearing, half hidden in the shadows. It looked human, but its limbs were too long, its posture too distorted. Its eyes reflected the light, glowing eerily in the darkness. "Help me," it repeated, taking a step forward. Its movements were jerky, unnatural, like a puppet on tangled strings. I backed into my tent, fumbling for my knife. "Stay back," I shouted, but the thing kept coming. Its eyes locked onto mine. Desperation took over, and I bolted from the tent, running blindly into the woods. The underbrush clawed at my legs, branches whipped my face, but I didn't care. I could hear it behind me, crashing through the forest with unnatural speed. I don't know how long I ran, but eventually I tripped and fell. Tumbling down a small ravine, I lay there, gasping for breath, listening for any sign of the creature. There was nothing but silence. After a few minutes, I cautiously climbed out, and started making my way back to the campsite, hoping it had given up the chase. When I reached the clearing, the fire was out, and my tent was slashed open. My gear was everywhere, but there was no sign of the creature. I quickly packed up what I could and ran back to my car, constantly looking over my shoulder, expecting to see those haunting eyes watching me. I reported the incident to the park rangers, but they found no evidence of anyone or anything out there. They chalked it up to my imagination, a mix of isolation and natural sounds playing tricks on my mind. But I know what I saw, I know what I heard, and I'll never forget those glowing eyes and that voice mimicking my own. I haven't been camping since, and I don't think I ever will again. The Appalachians are beautiful, but they hold secrets that are better left undiscovered.